What's up guys, welcome back to another Dying Light 2 video. Today we are going to be looking at the narrative choices that will be taking place within Dying Light. We have already briefly spoken about these narrative choices in previous videos, but because narrative choices play such a huge part within the game, we do need to have a deeper dive with the choices that will be coming up within Dying Light. Before I do get into the video, if you enjoy the content here and you want the latest news all to do with Dying Light 2, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and that notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever a new video is uploaded. Getting back into the video, we have already briefly mentioned different types of narrative choices within previous videos, but it hasn't been the sole subject. We have just mentioned it as we were passing by on other subjects. But when you do really look into the narrative choices coming to Dying Light 2, you can see that we can actually have a full video dedicated to it. This is how in-depth these narrative choices go. Just by making one choice within the game can completely change the story, it can completely change the world, it can also change different types of aesthetics, different types of mechanics, and in addition to that, it will also have an effect on multiplayer. And when there's something this big, we obviously need to talk about it. So, narrative choices do play a massive part within Dying Light 2. It'll be part of the core component of the main story, and it will actually change the story as you go through it, which will lead to you having multiple endings. Techland themselves has said even on your first playthrough, going through all of these different choices and getting the ending that you managed to get, it will only make out about 20% of all the content that's included with the story. So this will lead to huge amounts of replayability, because the second time you go through it, as long as you pick different choices to what you picked originally, you'll have a completely different ending and you'll also have a completely different world. Because narrative choices is such a big selling point for Dying Light 2, we have already had plenty of examples. Techland did release a Dying Light 2 gameplay demo back in E3 2019. And within just this 30 minutes of gameplay, we managed to get two very good examples for the narrative choices, and we can also see the consequences from them. The first example comes very early on. One of the renegades has shot Frank, which is one of the peacekeepers, and there's a chance of chasing the escaped renegade down or staying with Frank. A second character looking after Frank, called Matt, has encouraged you to chase down these renegades, because in addition to everything that's gone on, your own assignment before this was to get to an island which the renegades control. On this island, the renegades are controlling the water supply to the city, and if you turn on the pumps, the whole city will get free water. So the choice is either you stay with Frank to help him out, or you chase down the truck, seek revenge, and also turn on the water supply to the city. The choice that is made in the gameplay demo is to chase down the truck. This leads to a very dramatic chase of you jumping building to building and eventually building to van. You're also able to sneak right into the island right beneath their noses, get all the way in, which leads to you being able to be in a position for you to turn on the water supply later. But whilst going through this mission, you also find out that Frank didn't survive. Later on in the exact same mission, you get example 2 of these narrative choices. You've managed to get onto the island, you've infiltrated the renegades, and you meet the Colonel. But despite everything that you've been told about the water pumps, the renegades, and the Colonel himself, the Colonel has a completely different story, and this definitely starts to twist things up. He even spins it back on Matt and the peacekeepers and points them out to be the bad guys in this scenario. That they're not motivated by giving water to the city, in fact they're trying to plot against the Colonel. This now gives you another choice. Carry on with your mission and turn the water pumps on to give water to the city, or go back on what you said and trust the Colonel, who said there's another way to get water. In the gameplay demo, they decide to carry with your mission. This leads to some fighting, but water is now available within the city. Turning on the water pumps also opens up a whole new region for you to explore. This will give you new types of game mechanics, quests, and things to find. Unfortunately, you also find out that the Colonel was right. The peacekeepers were plotting against the Colonel, and the Colonel also knew the reason of why this whole area was flooded. You will now need to deal with completely new threats. Now these are just the two examples that we saw within this one mission. We don't know the outcomes of selecting the other options. Let's say you did stay with Frank. Maybe Frank will still be alive, but this also puts every other faction at risk, because now they have no water supply in the city. The second choice too is to trust the Colonel. You don't know the downside of this. Water will also not be supplied to the city, and you might be seen as a traitor to the Peacekeepers. You'll also not get the whole new region to explore where you find new gameplay mechanics, quests, and items to find. What Techland have done with these narrative choices is make it so there's not a correct answer. Each choice has a negative impact on you, the world, and the story, which delivers very hard consequences that you will need to react to after, and whatever choice that you make after this with the next load of narrative choices will be affected by the first lot of choices that you originally made. It shapes the world, the story, and most importantly Aiden as a character. If you do make a choice within the game but realize that you've made a horrible decision, unfortunately you cannot go back on it. You can't change history because it's already been set in play. But what you can do is rebuild bridges. Let's say that you had the choice to help one faction or another. And in this example, we're going to be talking about the Renegades and the Peacekeepers. And in your decision, you decided to help the Peacekeepers but realized later it was a mistake. Unfortunately, you can't take that decision back, but you can go to the Renegades and build up that trust again. They will offer you new types of missions, new types of quests, and upon completing those missions and quests, you will get trust from the Renegades, in hope that next time there's a narrative choice between the Peacekeepers and the Renegades, you will pick the Renegades. Whilst we're on the subject of talking about these different factions, they also play a massive part within the game and have their own narrative choices. Whilst exploring the world of Dying Light 2, you'll come across different types of locations, different types of outposts, different types of safe houses, all of which can be cleared out with the infected and can supply help for a certain faction. Once you've cleared out these locations, you can actually decide which faction it goes to, and each faction will provide a different benefit. We did go very much in depth with this in a previous video where we did specifically talk about factions. If you do want to see that, there will be a link in the description down below. But just as a quick overview, if you give one of these safe houses, locations, or outposts to a certain faction, they will provide a certain benefit to you, and each location will provide something completely different. This will change up the world that you belong in and also all the different gameplay mechanics and features surrounding you. There's even been examples where if you prioritize one faction over another, you'll be able to unlock very cool things like being able to unlock vehicles where you're able to drive around the world a lot quicker. And just like if you were to give a faction a certain outpost, they'll eventually start building new features and eventually thrive within the world of Dying Light 2. For those that you didn't pick, they'll eventually suffer. You can even have certain situations where if you dislike a certain faction, you can actually just kill them off. According to different interviews that are already out there, this can be done by giving them no support whatsoever. So every time that you clear out an outpost, a safe house, or a location, you never give it to that specific faction. You can also complete missions which go against that faction. And as time goes on and you keep on completing these different types of missions, you'll eventually kill that faction off. And by doing so, this does have a huge effect on the story. With all of these different narrative choices belonging within the main story, going all the way over to free roam, or even just being part of the side objectives, quests, and even just outposts that you come across and deciding which faction it goes to, all of this will change the world that you live in. The aesthetics of the world will change as different factions will start to thrive and they'll put up their banners everywhere. But it's not just about the aesthetics, it's also about the gameplay features that you'll be able to unlock. Some will give you different types of parkour routes where you're able to much easier and much efficiently get around roof to roof. Others will unlock the ability for you to actually use vehicles, allowing you to drive around on the streets. Some will give you new types of weapons that just make you so much tougher, and others will unlock different types of skills and abilities. And this list can carry on going on because Techland have said that there is more to be revealed. We also know that there will be a co-op multiplayer coming to Dying Light 2, very similar to what happened within Dying Light. But this time round, because narrative choices play such a big part, there will have to be one player that hosts it whilst another 3 friends can join their game. And when you join their game, you'll be able to see a world which is completely different to your world because they're going to be making completely different choices to you. You'll have situations where as soon as you go into their world, they'll have different types of parkour routes, different types of vehicles, different types of weapons. And this should hopefully lead to you wondering how they managed to get that. But on the opposite end, they're going to be joining your world and they're going to have the exact same feeling and wondering how you managed to get the things that you managed to get. And Techland hope that this will lead to a lot of replayability within Dying Light 2. It all comes down to these narrative choices. But anyway guys, this is everything that we know about the narrative choices within Dying Light 2. I'm sure within the future there will be another Dying to Know episode which actually go a lot more in depth with this, give us more examples. But so far with the examples that have been given, it's looking very good. If you do have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. But anyway guys, I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did enjoy, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. But for now, I'm going. So see ya.